say prevention is a critical aspect of this, and anything that the public can do to avoid any possible fire start during the next several days is going to be absolutely critical, as resources are stretched with the large fires that exist on the landscape. So really want to put a plug in for fire safety. From the Creek Fire, I'll start in Southwest Oregon. The Oregon Department of Forestry Incident Management Team is completing their work on that fire tomorrow, and we'll leave it in the hands of an interagency team to complete the work on that fire over the next week or so. But there is a fire line around the perimeter, and we are feeling really good about that fire. I'm currently sitting in Klamath Falls, and we just in-briefed and mobilized an ODF incident management team to the Van Meter fire that took off really quickly yesterday and evolved very rapidly. So we are just mobilizing a team to start management of that fire and get it under control as quickly as possible. If you move up to Northeast Oregon, folks, there are several fires on the landscape that are extremely challenging, starting with the Double Creek Fire, which is over 100,000 acres now and involves a lot of land in the Imnaha and Snake River drainages. ODF is working very closely with the fire team that's on that into private lands and other values at risk. The Sturgill and the Nebo Fire are a pair of fires in the Eagle Cap Wilderness that have the potential to move out of the wilderness and affect private land. And the locals are working really closely with the team again and the State Fire Marshal's office to help build a catcher's mitt, if you will, to catch that fire before it has negative impacts to private land if it moves out of the wilderness. And lastly, on the Willamette National Forest, it's about 10 miles from private lands, but we're working really closely with the team to help be part of a solution if that fire gets impacted by the east wind conditions and put toward the community of Oak Ridge and other private lands. And with that, I will turn it over to Travis to continue.
Thanks, Chief Shaw. Thanks, Governor Brown. The Office of State Fire Marshal, much like my colleague, Chief Shaw, very concerned around the critical nature of the weather and fuels conditions at this point. As we look at the forecast and estimate what conditions would be across the landscape, the combination of really dry winds, low relative humidities, and an unstable atmosphere can lead to explosive fire growth, and are very concerned about the next 72 hours and what that means, both in terms of new fires that start, but also larger fires on the landscape. For the Office of State Fire Marshal, there are currently 2 conflagrations that have been declared thanks to Governor Brown's leadership. The first one is the Double Creek Fire, as Chief Shaw mentioned, in the Imnaha River drainage. And the second is the Sturgill Fire, both in Northeast Oregon. Over 100 homes are in some level of evacuation currently across both of those fires. The Office of State Fire Marshal mobilized an incident command team along with 9 structural task forces from your Oregon Fire Service to respond to Wallowa County to help protect those homes and the residents within Wallowa County. Yesterday, again with the very challenging weather conditions and fuel conditions, the Van Meter fire rapidly grew out in Klamath County. The Office of State Fire Marshal immediately mobilized 2 additional structural task forces to help assist. There were 260 homes in some level of evacuation as that fire rapidly grew. We're currently working in partnership with the Oregon Department of Forestry on that Van Meter fire, and will continue to be engaged to protect the citizens of Klamath County. There are right now 11 Oregon Fire Service task forces that are spread out across the numerous fires in Oregon. As Chief Shaw mentioned, the Cedar Creek Fire on the Willamette National Forest, 12 to 15 miles east of Oak Ridge, remains a concern. The Office of State Fire Marshal is heavily engaged with the local partners there, from the county to the sheriff all the way up through the incident management team, and have contingency plans to engage with the county and the incident management team based off the weather forecast and predicted east winds. Lastly, the Rum Creek Fire, a fire in Southern Oregon. The Office of State Fire Marshal yesterday, thanks to amazing work by our wildland partners in the Oregon Fire Service, was able to demobilize off that fire and return 6 structural task forces to your home fire departments based off the reduced threat to the community of Merlin. In preparation for this weather event and ongoing large fires across the landscape, the Office of State Fire Marshal has worked very collaboratively with OEM, along with our partners to the north in the state of Washington, and has brought in 3 additional structural task forces to help support ongoing fires and pre-position those in areas such as the Gorge and also southern Willamette Valley should new fires erupt or large fires become problematic and threaten homes and communities. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Director Phelps from OEM.
Hey, thanks so much, Travis. I really appreciate that. My name is Andrew Phelps. I serve as the Director of the Oregon Department of Emergency Management, and I want to begin just by extending my gratitude to our fire partners, Department of Forestry, the State Fire Marshal's Office, and of course all of those local departments that have been doing so much incredible work protecting communities, preserving natural resources, and of course protecting lives during this year's fire season. We find ourselves in a bit of a unique circumstance right now, and a unique opportunity when it comes to wildfire threat. This is one of the few events where we find ourselves better positioned to collectively prepare and reduce our risk of wildfire that is exacerbated by the forecasted winds throughout the Cascades and much of Western Oregon. Knowing about the potential wildfire threat, the likelihood of power outages, limited resources, the fire already on the landscape, and the strain on our first responders, as well as the potential impacts to our critical infrastructure, we have chosen to activate the state's Emergency Coordination Center to coordinate the needs and resources across the state. Local jurisdictions have done incredible work preparing for this moment, and they know their communities best, the risks of their communities, the resources they have, and when to reach out to the state for additional assistance. We're working directly with everyone you see here today on the call, as well as our local partners, our tribal partners, nonprofit organizations, and the private sector to make sure that folks have what they need to stay safe. This event also emphasizes the recurring need to build and sustain a culture of preparedness here in the state of Oregon. This is another weather and climate-driven event. Thanks to our partners with the Weather Service, we have a little bit of time to do our part to be as ready as possible. So now is the time to charge your devices, ensure you have flashlights and batteries and those essentials like non-perishable food and water and extra medication in case you have to go without power for a couple of days or you need to evacuate your home due to a threat of wildfire. We also recommend, if you think you're going to need a little extra help preparing, reach out to your neighbors, family, local community groups, and ask for help. And if you know folks in your community, friends, neighbors, coworkers, colleagues, people that you know may need a little extra help preparing for this event, reach out to them, offer some assistance, and if we do that, we can all get through this. This is really about doing what you can, where you are, with what you have. For every one of us who is planned and ready and prepared, that's only going to strengthen the ability of our first responders to help the folks who haven't been able to prepare and need the help the most, especially our most vulnerable populations. So a big part of today is being informed and staying ready. Sign up for emergency alerts at your county level emergency management office if you haven't already done so. Again, touch base with those neighbors and folks in your community so that you all understand the hazards, the risks, and what resources you have in your community to help each other out. And really important to be ready to evacuate. We're talking a lot today about the public safety power shutoffs. We know that we could have power outages that weren't planned, but due to the wind. We also know that these fires that are currently burning in the state could expand and new fires could start. So be ready to evacuate. Make sure you've got a plan to leave your home quickly, know your evacuation levels, have your go bag ready to go, and make sure you've got those essential documents, medication, cell phone chargers, and all those other things that are so important if you have to leave your home in an easy to grab spot. And remember, if you have to evacuate, the time to prepare, quite frankly, is over, and now it's time to act. So make sure you listen to incident and local authorities to get current evacuation levels and updates. In just a moment, you're going to hear from our utility partners about potential power outages, public safety power shutoffs. I'm here to help ensure you know how best to prepare for that possibility. and to ensure the full force of state government is here to support city, county, and tribal emergency management organizations as they prepare their communities. And with that, I'll pass it over to Maria Pope with Portland General Electric. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Governor Brown, thank you for your leadership and the opportunity to join you and your state team here today. Weather conditions have created extremely dangerous risk of fire, and we're closely monitoring and responding to the evolving situation. High winds are forecasted to begin early Friday morning and extend through Saturday. The safety of Portland General Electric and all utility customers and communities that we serve is always our first priority. At this point, we believe it is very likely that we will initiate public safety power shutoffs in all 10 of our identified high-risk fire zones. In total, this will impact approximately 30,000 homes and businesses. Turning off power is a last resort for PGE, and it's only done to protect customers, their property, and the communities that we serve from the risk of fire. Also, given that the weather conditions are preparing for significant outages across our service area caused by all of the high winds, these projected winds will make it entirely possible that there will be significant damage to our system, both within and outside of the 10 PSPS areas. Our field crews and support workers, as well as additional resources from partner utilities, will be deployed during the event and will work until power is fully restored. We ask you, as has been described already, please have a plan and be ready for the loss of power. More information is available at portlandgeneral.com. Thank you. And with that, let me turn it over to Alan Barrett.
Okay. Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Governor Brown. Providing safe and reliable power is Pacific Power's mission. We prioritize the safety of our customers, employees, and communities. Our advanced meteorology models currently anticipate shutoffs are necessary to reduce elevated wildfire risk. Forecasts of high, gusty, easterly winds in our service territory during extreme wildfire conditions have prompted Pacific Power to issue public safety power shutoff notices to approximately 12,500 of our customers in parts of Lincoln, Tillamook, Douglas, Lynn, and Marion counties. Current forecasts indicate conditions for a public safety power shutoff could be met in some areas as early as just shortly after midnight tonight or early morning hours on Friday. However, due to the dynamic nature of the wind event, certain areas could experience different start times and the public safety power shutoff durations. It's our goal to communicate the estimated start times with customers this evening with continued communication throughout the event. Pacific Power has worked with local emergency managers to set up fully staffed customer resource centers in Douglas, Marion, and Lynn counties. Customers can find accessible seating, ice, charging stations, air conditioning, water, and food at these resource centers. Impacted customers have been notified of the public safety power shutoff through phone calls, emails, and text messages. As stated earlier, customers will continue to receive updates through ongoing communications throughout the event. A map of these impacted areas is available on our website, which allows our customers to look up impacted areas by addresses. Once conditions allow, it's important to keep in mind that restoring power may take time as we work to ensure areas are safe before re-energizing the lines. We're staging our crews to be ready to restore power when it's possible to do so, which we do currently estimate to begin Saturday afternoon. So thank you. And I turn it back over to you now, Governor.
Thank you so much, Alan. Really appreciate your time and energy today. And with that, Liz, we're ready to take questions.
Thank you, Governor. I'm asking our media attendees if there's anyone who has a question. I don't see any just yet, so give us just one moment. If there's any reporters on who'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand now. All right. Okay, Governor, we're going to start with Julia Shumway with Oregon Capital Chronicle. Go ahead, Julia.
Thanks. So I'd like to know how seriously should Oregonians throughout the state be taking this? Are there people in specific areas, like the PSPS areas, maybe who are living closer to the forests, who should be more concerned, or should everyone throughout the state be prepared to evacuate, be prepared to have potential impacts from these fire events this weekend?
So, Julia, given the events we've had over the last couple of years, I'm certainly asking all Oregonians to be prepared for emergencies generally. I think it's really important for families to have a plan and to be ready. Director Phelps talked about making sure that you are 2-week ready, including having water and non-perishable foods for a 2-week period. That's just something good to have in place. In terms of specific areas, I'm going to turn it over to Travis Medema to talk about where we should be concerned.
Thanks, Governor, and I appreciate that question. Clearly, Oregon is at a place in space with its weather conditions as this dynamic system sets up that across much of the state there is very high fire risk. And so Oregonians should always be prepared for wildfire. The concerns from the east winds, the strong easterly winds, really is down the Columbia River and Gorge area, south to basically Douglas County, and their impacts on any existing fires on the landscape. That said, within those areas, including the coastal mountains, any new fires that start have the potential to become significant and grow rapidly. And so again, would encourage all Oregonians as you travel around during these very critical fire weather conditions to be safe and practice fire safety. So assure that, as you're out and about, that you're doing everything you can to limit one spark, because one spark could cause a significant wildfire under these severe conditions.
Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, Julia. Next up is Genevieve Rayom with KATU.
Hi, thanks for hosting this session. I have a question specifically about the Columbia Gorge. We're here in Corbett now. We know it's preparing for its power to potentially go out in the coming days. What are the biggest risks for people who are out here in the Columbia River Gorge, and what has been done since the Eagle Creek fire to prepare this area for fires?
That's a really great question, Genevieve. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Shutoff. We can catch him on location. But I will say that the work that we have done in the last couple of years around Senate Bill 762 to both ensure that we are investing in communities to make sure they are better prepared with things like defensible space. Secondly, making sure that we have more resources and more boots on the ground. And thirdly, that we're doing everything we can during the non-fire season, the off-fire season, to create healthier landscapes. The legislature agreed to my request of investing $200 million in these three things, and it's made a huge difference on the ground. For example, in circumstances like this, we can pre-position both people and resources in key locations. I don't know, Chief Shaw, if you can respond, I'd love you to take it further.
Thanks, Governor. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I can say it as eloquently as you just did. That is exactly how we have prepared since the Eagle Creek fire, which, as we all know, was extremely catastrophic. In the investments and the leadership from your office and the legislature to invest in education and mitigation efforts and education efforts has gone a long way.
Okay. Hey, Chief Shaw?
The investments in resources has helped us position resources in advance of events like this and be prepared on the suppression side. But the efforts on the mitigation side is what's really important, and that has been a new thing in the state of Oregon in the last few years, based on the fires that we've experienced over the last couple of years. So lots of good work going on, and we're
All right. I'm going to cut Chief Shaw off. Travis, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Thanks, Governor. I'd just echo your statements. As we really think about Oregon's wildfire problem, there's three areas to focus. One is, how do we respond to wildfires? How do we have fire-adapted communities? And then how do we manage and maintain healthy landscapes? And as we think about that, the passage of Senate Bill 762 through your leadership really led the way on making investments as we think about the challenges that we're facing in this 2022 wildfire season. As I mentioned earlier, through those investments of Senate Bill 762 in the Gorge area, we're able to bring in an additional task force and place them there that will better protect communities, along with pre-positioning assets across the state. Additionally, 762 made a significant investment in the local fire service through a grant that we just released. It's called an upstaffing grant. That allowed local fire agencies to bring on additional firefighters during these peak times of wildfire risk. So each community out there has additional firefighters that they normally wouldn't have had without the investments of Senate Bill 762. And as we think long-term about Oregon's problems and challenges with wildfire, investments and strategies around those three areas, I think, will be pivotal as we think about the future.
Thank you. I think that was a good interpretation of Chief Shaw's comments. Next question, Liz.
Yes, thank you. Next up is Todd Milborn with OPB.
Yeah, thank you. We talked about the planned outages in a number of communities, but of course there's also a risk of outages that happen just because of the weather. And so I was wondering, maybe this is particularly directed at the utilities. Could you speak to that? Both what people should be keeping in mind, not just in terms of planned outages, but outages that might happen as a result of the weather.
Maria, I'm going to turn it to you. Thank you, Governor. And absolutely, there's no question that such significant high winds will result in damage to utility power equipment, and we will work as quickly and, most importantly, as safely as possible to restore power. There will be restorations if the high winds continue that will be delayed until the winds will be subsided. Alan, anything from Pacific Core?
Yeah, thank you for the question, because while the public safety power shutoffs are focused in these targeted areas, we have also deployed resources in other areas in anticipation of outages so that we're able to respond appropriately as well.
Thank you, Todd. Liz, I think we're ready for the next question.
Yes, Governor, we have one more question from KATU, so we'll go back to Genevieve.
Sure.
Thank you for the double question here. This is kind of piggybacking off of the first question here, but when we talk about the fire danger for this weekend, I think a lot of people think about 2017 and 2020 as those significant fire years. How concerned are fire officials right now about new fire starts in areas that are not already burning?
I'll turn that over to Travis, but Genevieve, our goal for today is to encourage Oregonians to continue to be prepared and have a plan in place, obviously to do anything they can to prevent human-caused fires. Each one of us can make a difference over the next 48 to 72 hours. So, and our goal here, of course, is to make sure that we save lives and protect property. And so that's why we're doing this event, and I'll let Travis talk about more specifics from the ground.
Thanks, Governor. Thanks, Genevieve. Great question. You know, as we look at conditions across Oregon, we're really at what I would kind of characterize as the apex of fire season, where fuels have been drying all summer long. You look at weather conditions in terms of the amount of relative humidity, you look at the dryness of the air mass, and you look at projected east winds and forecasts of east winds. As we progress through the 2022 fire season, it's really led us up to this point in terms of the critical nature of where we're at. And so any new starts could be very, very, very problematic over the next 72 hours. Additionally, in the last 24 hours, we did have some lightning that moved through Oregon. It started in southern Oregon, moved up through the Klamath Lake area, through central and into eastern Oregon. And those fires, some were found originally and very quickly. Some of those actually hang on in the material for multiple days, and we call them sleepers. And so as you see fuel conditions reach this critical mass, there are potentially other fires out there from the lightning storm that passed through yesterday. So we are at a critical point in the 2022 fire season in terms of fuels and weather. Any new starts that occur will be very problematic. Additionally, there are potentially other fires out there on the landscape that we don't know about yet because of the lightning storms that have moved through.
Genevieve, we were very fortunate this year to have a cool, wet spring. I think many folks called it January. That's made a huge difference, and honestly, the work we've done to prepare with the investments made by the legislature and Senate Bill 762 have really made a difference this fire season. So thank you. Liz, are there any other questions?
Yes, we have one more question, Governor. Our last question will be from Beth Slavic with the Oregonian.
Beth, take it away.
Hi, thank you. What should people in urban areas keep in mind? They may be farther from the fires, but potentially impacted by smoke or other things.
Absolutely. Certainly the high temperatures on Saturday are very concerning. I've directed the Office of Emergency Management and Director Phelps to work with county emergency management to make sure that cooling centers that are operated by generators are open so people have a place to go that's safe and healthy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Phelps.
Thanks so much, Governor. Yeah, you know, smoke is going to impact a much greater area than certainly the areas that are going to be impacted by the winds. We know that we've got fires burning throughout the West, and a lot of that smoke is expected to carry westward on those winds coming out of the east. So like with every fire season, if you're susceptible to the impacts from smoke, if you have respiratory issues, try to limit your activity, try to stay indoors as best you can. And many of our communities are proactively establishing cooling centers, clean air shelters, etc. But just avoid any unnecessary time outdoors while we are experiencing these heavy smoke events.
Thank you, Liz. Any more questions?
No, we're good. That was all. Thank you, Governor.
All right. I want to say thank you to our public utilities partners, Maria Pope from PGE and Alan Barrett from Pacific Corps. We appreciate your willingness to join us today. Want to give a big shout out to our fire response community, both the Department of Forestry as well as the Office of State Fire Marshal, as well as all the firefighters out there. Thank you so much for your service and dedication. And to my fellow Oregonians, please stay safe out there and get a plan in place if you don't have one already, and sign up for OR Alert if you haven't done so. Thank you and take care.